Let's go. No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
If there ain't gonna be no justice.
There ain't gonna be no peace.
Newark Police Department is definitely not the police department of 1967 in many different ways, and then I think we've made tremendous strides in the last few years even, but you know, I don't think the trauma, which is a different thing, has been really dealt with.
Well, there always was a problem with the police because several police officers had been involved in excessive use of force, but none so obvious as this one, because it was done hot summer night, thousands of people, no air conditioner in Hayes' home, so a lot of people were in the street.
In 1967, I was 9 years old, and I was basically right in the heart of the rebellion. I lived on a little street called Avon Place, which was right off of Springfield Avenue, and I saw an incredible amount of devastation. And I mean, literally, the night sky lit up with all the fires that had been set on all the stores up and down Springfield Avenue.
And I wanted to talk about the burning too, because a lot of folks said, hey, you burn your own house down. Part of the problem was that we had folks who were in businesses that took advantage of people, and the people knew that. So the targets for a lot of the folks were the folks who were doing them bad.
And we were in a time of our history where we were almost going back to where slavery, where white cops, they saw something black or brown, you're dead.
Hardest thing that still bothers me is the dogs. I was afraid that the dogs was going to be used as a weapon, and you're sicking dogs on people, and that's what was happening back then.
The police were abusing people, and the police were beating people for no reason.
One of my friends, they had a brother, now we would say he was autistic, his name was Butch, and everybody knew him in the neighborhood, and he was missing, and they couldn't find him. So when they found him, he was a John Doe in the morgue. So the family didn't, you know, that still bothers me that here was a kid, everybody knew him in the neighborhood, he was loved, but if they told him to do something, he wouldn't have understood what to do, you know, if you didn't know him. So if the police, state troopers, National Guard gave him a command, he wouldn't have known what to do.
It was rebellion because we're tired of this. We've been going through this for years, and we're supposed to be free.
The police was there almost to, if you pardon the expression, to keep their foot on the neck of the community. And we couldn't go to police and ask for help. We couldn't go to the police and expect them to show any compassion to our situation, compassion being love in action. We didn't expect love from the police department, and we certainly didn't expect them to act out of love when it came to our communities.
I guess policing in this country has not been centered around that. It's been centered around suppressing us and people in our community and making sure we stayed in a specific place or a specific neighborhood or did whatever. It hasn't been out of love and protecting our community and making sure grandma got to the store safely and got home safely, and her kids not doing nothing they ain't got no business doing, and everybody's doing what's right and what's good, and we knew each other.
We know that trauma is experienced historically, right? It gets passed down. And just because you didn't experience it directly, right, you still have those residual effects. And so residents who experienced the '67 rebellion, the anniversary, the birth dates don't stop coming, to see a marked police car can be triggering for them still.
And it's been, you know, it's been a scar on the city's history, on the police department's history. and I don't know if it's one we've ever fully come to terms with. The consent decree is a 225 section court order that mandates a whole wide variety of reforms for the police department. And it essentially addresses everything that people talk about as being wrong with policing in the United States today. It mandates requirements around civilian oversight, internal affairs issues, search and seizure, community policing, community engagement, implicit bias in policing, and so on. It just goes on and on and on.
With the consent decree, when you sat down and said this is what was going to happen, it's positive, and I think the best part about it was because the city was willing to have citizens be part of it. It was just not a police mandate.
So around 2017, when we actually wanted to begin rolling out policy changes and changes to training curriculum for police officers consistent with the consent decree, activists and other people who'd just been upset with how policing had been conducted in this city for years were given a space where they could come on an evening in their community, and a certain topic would be discussed, whether it's internal affairs or search and seizure, whatever the topic was for the night. And there was a facilitated discussion and then small group discussions after that. And people actually got to give their feedback on what the policies would be, on what the training would be, which added legitimacy to the process, I believe.
It's important because you get to hear the complaints of the citizens firsthand. And when I was the commander of the 6th Precinct, one of the things I did during the meetings, I would take notes. And the second time we met, we would go over what we got right and what we got wrong.
And so the consent decree brought a way that community was able to have some input, because back then, community didn't have any input in policing.
Under the mayor's vision, I think what we're working on is ways, particularly with the Office of Violence Prevention, by embedding social workers into precincts. We're looking for ways to try and address more of the root causes that lead to demands for police service, to try and eliminate issues before they become crimes for police.
I look at it as a public health kind of problem, the same way we deal with any other kind of way we're dealing with coronavirus. Right? All of the things that we have to put together to mitigate what's happening around coronavirus is the same kind of way we have to deal with violence. And if you look at it like medicine or a disease, some people are so far gone that they need treatment. They're going to not only get reinfected, but they're going to infect other people.
Because if we don't allow that healing process to happen, we continue to have a cycle of violence, where the perpetrator can become the victim and the victim can become the perpetrator. And sometimes it's one and the same.
Community policing is the citizens and the police and the clergy solving our issues together. The police can't handle every issue.
And so we have social workers that are now embedded in all of the police precincts to be able to help people when they walk in versus sending them all over the city and getting a runaround, which creates more frustration, more anxiety, and more lack of trust, and the credibility gets broken.
We do so much more than just put handcuffs on people. And I think that stigma of the handcuffs, I think that goes to show why people don't like to deal with police officers. Because they feel like if I deal with you one-on-one as an officer, the only thing you're gonna do is cuff me. At the end of this interaction, no matter what happens, you're gonna grab handcuffs and try to take my freedom away. There's no other ending. But when you expand on that narrative and say, well, I do so much more than just handcuff people. I do this, I do that, I do this, I do that. And people look at you like, I didn't even know that. I have a light out on my street. Can you help with that? I'm like, yeah, let me get the number off the pole. I'll send it in and it should be up in a week. And they're like, their mind is blown that we do so many other things that people just kind of don't understand that we like being a part of.
I think some of the community relationship work we do, it kind of spreads. Once an officer experiences the joy of doing something for someone, I think it motivates them to keep doing it.
As you learn how to correct people and their behavior in a way that's centered around love. That's centered around, I'm engaging you, like I'm okay. I used to have teachers say, well, how you get to talk to them like that? If I tell them to sit down, they're gonna cuss me out. That's because I put money in the bank. And I used to tell them, I got a lot of money in the bank. You don't have money in the bank. And my money in the bank comes from me being at the football game, at the basketball game, at the bus stop when they go home, speaking to them in the morning, making sure they're good and safe. So when I have to correct them, I got a lot of money to expend in that area. So I can correct them and they could take my correction, right? And understand that I'm correcting them out of love.
It's been our experience here that when you create all this reform and you involve the community in that kind of way, it's kind of everything that you're doing in policing eventually changes the culture around policing in the city.
We're making strides with image. I remember everyone loved the fire department and everyone hated the police, but I think we're changing that narrative because I feel it's different. I feel when I walk in a building, I feel the love that maybe I didn't feel in 1996 when I started. I feel it now. And you know, it's based on the work we put in with the community and the relationships we built.
So May 25th, it wasn't even a full week after George Floyd had been murdered. It was potentially a tipping point. It was the point where in cities across the country, protests were happening and they were turning violent. But what's different here is we never reached that tipping point where things got out of control. But that night, it was because of the community. It was because of people from the community stood between outsiders who came here to, you know, try and destroy police cars, try and burn down a precinct. And they got between the cops and those outsiders and told them, you're not going to do that here.
And we were floored, honestly. It was one of those times where you don't realize how many people support you until you see them. And that showed the progress. Because as you looked all over the national media, and my family was scared for me when I was going out and working some of these protests, because we didn't know what was going to happen. It was a very volatile time, and people were rightfully upset. But Newark is one of the few major urban cities that didn't burn, that didn't have mass riots, that didn't have the same civil unrest, that had community members who were standing side by side with the police saying that we don't want that type of thing to happen here because of the progress.
And they actually defended us. Listen, no, these are our police officers because we built that relationship through our daily work.
It does speak to the relationship that the city has with the police, but also the level of restraint that the police have learned over the years is also important to note. Even with our treatment of the entire protest from the beginning all the way to the end, kind of reminds people that we're in a different place. Like the people in the community, they don't see flap-jacketed cops with helmets and billy clubs, long sticks and tear gas and all that stuff like they see in other places. In fact, they don't expect that. And if we would have came out like that, we would have had the same results that everybody else had. And really what it is people want to be safe from everybody, which is a right thing, and they don't know how to articulate that, right? I want to be safe from people that are shooting people in my neighborhood, and I don't want to be killed by the police either. How do we fix both of those things? And that's really what mayors across the country have to contend with, particularly in cities like Newark.
Right now, I would tell anybody who's wondering what the future looks like, not only in Newark but policing across the country, to be hopeful. I would tell them to give us an opportunity to change your minds about some of the negativity that history has created, and give us an opportunity to kind of prove our word.
This marriage that we have and this moving forward to help heal the community gives people hope so that the trust that has been broken, we're starting to now begin to try to do some recovery work in that, to be able to do some healing work in that, some atonement work in that. And so the 17th Avenue precinct, where the 67 Rebellion sparked out of, is now a place that people can come to get resources and help. So a place where people were once coming and being arrested and even sometimes brutalized, right, is now a place of hope and healing. Now a place where people could come and get help, where we have social workers, outreach workers, victim advocates, and they can just walk in and say, I need help.
We have to put it out there that consistently that people begin to understand that this city is working to change the culture despite what's going on. They know that this is happening no matter what anybody says. And hope is important, right? Hope and belief is important. People really don't understand how powerful hope is